ears and think, that could be me one day.
I know what it was like when I was in the Western Desert and we didn't have any air cover. And the German dive bombers used to come along, and if we were in convoy, bomb the front of the convoy. The convoy had to stop because only one road up into the Western Desert. And of course, we all scattered into the desert to avoid being machine gunned. And we found, and it was explained to us, that by standing upright rather than lying down in the sand, we were less liable to get hit. So this is what we did. We stood when I had to receive that. It only took perhaps maybe 3 seconds for that plane to go over, but it sounded like eternity when you're standing there and the machine guns are firing from these planes. Yes. You think of those sort of things.
Planes are a constant presence in the skies above Wootton Bassett on their final approach into the airbase nearby.
It's one of those things, I suppose, that Lynham and the Hercules, it gets into your blood. You feel it is part of you. My husband's actually done 27 years in the RAF. Our son served at Lynham as well.
There you go.
Right.
One cup of coffee.
It's done a lot for the town.
In late January 2005, I lost an aircraft and crew in Iraq. It was shot down by the insurgents. On that day, we lost 10 men. Those 10 men were repatriated through RAF Lynham. That was the first time that Wootton Bassett had the opportunity to show their love and their respect for the military. And it was a chap called Chris Winnell, who was the mayor at the time.
There was a big feeling about that. There was such a large loss of life, and more and more people turned up. The street was lined both sides, probably 2, 3, even 4 deep in places. And all you could hear when the hearses went through was a few people sobbing. Very, very sad. And I believe that that probably set the standard to be followed.
As well as Mayor of Wootton Bassett, I'm also the ringing master in St Bartholomew's Church. Church bell ringing is a quintessentially English pastime with a very distinctive sound. I do it because my family have always done it. My father did it, my grandfather did it. It was something that everybody in the village had a go at some point, just to see if they had the knack, if they were good enough at it. We were practicing one Monday night, as we always do, when a repatriation came through, and it didn't feel appropriate to be ringing the church bells when the cortege was coming through the town. So we stopped and we rang just the tenor bell on its own. After we spoke to members of the British Legion and others who were present at the repatriation, and they said what an atmospheric and poignant sound that was to have. So we were asked whether we could do it again.
The tenor bell is the deepest note in a tower, and that's the one you would normally choose to ring when you're tolling the bell for a funeral. But also because it's a bigger bell, the sound is louder and the noise travels further. I'm pleased that I've had the time to do that tolling of the bell, because it's a mark of respect for the soldiers who've fallen and their families. It's not just every day in a market town, it's that the market town itself has stopped to say we acknowledge what's passing through our town.
This morning over Ho Chi Minh City, we'll wake with severe marmalade spreading from the west. Qatar Airways, world's 5-star airline.
Justin Timberlake, Beyonce and Lionel Richie are all expected at Michael Jackson's funeral this week. Private burials expected for family and friends. A woman's been hurt after fairground ride steps collapsed at Haddington near Caen last night. A repatriation will take place for 2 soldiers at 1:30 this lunchtime in Wootton Bassett. One of them was a friend of Prince Charles.
A Monday morning in July. 2 British soldiers are being repatriated today, victims of a roadside bombing in Afghanistan. Wootton Bassett gets ready.
Many officers have experienced this now, sadly, 70 plus times we've carried out this operation. And we have officers who volunteer locally from Wootton Bassett to stay on extra hours to cover, you know, the resources. And we also have officers come up from Plymouth, come up from Salisbury. It's had an impact on us all.
Today we're repatriating 2 soldiers, the first one being Lieutenant Colonel Rupert Thorneloe from the 1st Battalion, the Welsh Guards, and Trooper Joshua Hammond from the 2nd Royal Tank Regiment. Therefore, the cortege will be made up of 2 hearses containing the service personnel that have been killed and the spare hearse. There will be the lead undertaker's vehicle at the front and...
Almost the anointed hour comes along, and it's normally 11 o'clock where the aircraft will fly past, and this is the aircraft that's bringing the boys home. The C-17, generally they've come direct from Afghanistan with maybe just one refueling stop along the way, and they will do a fly past. And that's when the realisation, I think, first dawns on the family that their loved ones aren't coming back on R&R. They're not coming back on the end of tour, but they are coming back, you know, as dead casualties of the war in Afghanistan.
It's a totally different sound to the Hercules, the humdrum sound of the Hercules. You shudder and think, that's another family, another repatriation.
I can't stop thinking about him. As a child, helping him fly his kite, I suppose. Introducing him to sailing, which became a great passion. Wherever I go, I see him.
I was in the fire service for 32.5 years. I know the close-knit community of the services, and when you lose someone, you all feel it. The same with the armed services. It's the family of the armed services, and I want to show